Good evening and welcome to Poland Daily, the first English news program in Poland. I'm your host, Benjamin Lee. A huge march against violence was supposed to take place in Białystok today. The event ended up as a smaller meeting during which the leaders of the Democratic Left Alliance, Together, and the Spring parties shouted a few slogans before making their way back to Warsaw. The Civic Platform and the Polish People's Parties were not involved in the event.
Today's march was a response to the events that transpired during the Equality March in Białystok last Saturday. The demonstration against violence was attended by the politicians of the Liberal Spring Party.
Today we're here to say that we can all live peacefully, those who are of this or that sexual orientation, or those who vote for this or that party, because there is only one Poland.
We're here because we want to demonstrate against such shameful acts that took place here last week and to show our solidarity to the people of Białystok.
We want to have peace between our citizens and tourists, so we wouldn't witness such horrific scenes as recently. I shouldn't be here on this stage. If those who threw the first stone last week got into power, there wouldn't be a place for people like me and you in this country. Do we want such a Poland?
The next event announced by the leader of the Green Party is to take place in Płock.
The 29th run of the Warsaw Uprising took place yesterday as one of the staple elements of the important anniversary celebrations. On Saturday evening, around 11.5 thousand people participated in the run along the streets of Poland's capital, Warsaw. It was a record-breaking turnout of the history of the race. Runners took part in the event to honor the heroes of the Warsaw Uprising, which took place on August 1st, 1944.
The 29th Warsaw Uprising 5 km run began at 8:30 p.m. at Bonifraterska Street, and the 10 km distance participants started at 9:10 p.m. The runners were cheered along the route by the veterans of the Warsaw Uprising and the general public. Special artistic installations referring to heroic fights against German occupiers in 1944 were placed along the way. The 1944 Warsaw Uprising run is one of the 3 separate running events to commemorate Polish historical events, and is part of the so-called Warsaw Running Triad, named Run for the Memory, which also includes the May 3rd Constitution Run and the Independence Run. The Warsaw Uprising Run aims to keep alive the memory of the tragic past of Warsaw while under Second World War German occupation, which influenced the fate of subsequent generations of Poles.
Violent storms took place in the Upper Silesia and the Dąbrowa Basin on Saturday, causing buildings and cars to be flooded, roads shut down, and serious traffic hazards. The situation was particularly difficult in the city of Katowice.
I spoke to the Silesian governor and the chief of the regional state fire service. The situation has been under control and all the needed help was provided by the services to those whose health and property have been damaged as a result of storms and floods. I want to thank everyone who selflessly helps their neighbors.
The center of the city of Katowice has been flooded. The water damaged the Katowice railway station. A dozen or so cars parked in the underground garage have been flooded in the Zawoda district. The damage is an effect of a storm that has passed over Katowice. The firefighters received over 170 alerts. Fortunately, no people have been wounded.
The Stromboli volcano, located on the Italian island, erupted at the beginning of this month. Yesterday evening, Mount Etna in Sicily has sprung into life, releasing huge plumes of volcanic ash into the sky.
Mount Etna has burst into life, releasing huge plumes of volcano ash into the sky. The Sicilian volcano, which is 3,300 meters long, often explodes but rarely causes damage. The last serious Etna eruption took place in 1992. The unique activity of the highest volcano in Europe constantly attracts tourists to Sicily.
That's it for today. See you next time on Poland Daily. But stay tuned for the Poland Daily Weather Report, followed by the Poland Daily Business section.
Welcome to Poland Daily Weather. Let's take a look at the forecast for tonight. A warm night across the country with temperatures ranging between 16 degrees in Kraków to 19 degrees in Wrocław and Zielona Góra. Light overcast sky in central and on the west, while around Poznań, Bydgoszcz and Wrocław we are expecting thunderstorms. And now over to tomorrow. Rainfalls and storms will appear on the west and on the south. On the northeast we will see plenty of sunlight. The temperature will range from 25 to 31 degrees. Let's see the forecast for the following 3 days. Tuesday will bring us lower temperatures ranging from 23 to 26 degrees. On Wednesday, rainfalls will appear across Poland. Wind will be gusty. On Thursday, we will see more sunlight. Temperature will range from 22 to 25 degrees. Thank you for watching and see you soon.
Poland Daily Business Edition. And tonight we will look a little bit closer at the coincidence. Poland has one of the biggest of GDP growth in Europe. The country is called as one of the best places to invest in and have a business in. And also recently we learned that this is one of the 13 best places to live on the face of this earth. The question is it a coincidence or there is a part of deliberate policy of the current government? The question is being asked to Marcin Roszkowski of Jagiellonian Institute. Sir, what do you think about that?
There should be a balance between whether it's due to hard work of many Poles or the policies of Polish government. Probably it's the both. It's both because on one hand Poles work very hard, but on the other hand there are some certain policies that are adopted by the government that make the life easier. On one hand you have the social programs like 500 plus or some other support for families. On the other hand, you have the loopholes in the tax system, for example, being closed. Actually, the loopholes in the VAT tax or akcyza, they were disturbing the competition on the market. So generally, after the major problem being solved in the regulatory system, the life is a bit easier in Poland.
Right. Maybe the factor that is deciding on the good conjuncture in Poland is that we are part of the European Union. There's this 500 million plus market, and because of the price competition, because of the lower wages in Poland, a quarter or half of those that are paid in Germany, there is a competitive advantage of Polish enterprises or the enterprises located in Poland comparing to the French or Italian?
I think we are the Polish economy is shifting towards higher margins in business, and we are no longer the support, the backbone of labor force for example for German economy. Of course, the trade exchanges. Germany is our major trade exchange partner, but generally we are shifting to higher margins in our companies. So the situation is changing. The unemployment is very little. It's almost at the level of a natural unemployment. Natural meaning it cannot go lower. The government is trying to invite more people to the working force. I mean, the elderly, for example, 50 plus, but generally we are importing workforce from abroad, like from Ukraine or Belarus.
Well, that's true. We have about 67% of all people who can work actually employed, while Germany and Holland have about 80%. So, yeah, so there is a margin to improve.
There is still margin for improvement. This is one of the sectors. The other part of the employment sector is a kind of an incentive for the young people to start the work, to be available in the workforce as soon as possible. There is a bill being introduced to reduce the the taxes for the people joining the starting working under 26 years. So generally, the incentives are there both on the younger side or on the older side.
We are in the election period, and obviously the current government will portray the situation as their own achievement. The question is, will that growth sustain for the upcoming years, and what to do to keep that growth drivers ongoing?
I think most of the policies, plus the hard work of Poles, will be there. You can see the figures for example, Germany or for the Eurozone. Germany is growing under 1%, and Poland is growing for 5% annually. So this is so the base is different, but generally the dynamic is much larger in Poland. So generally, I think we should look for the bright future, despite that the world's economy will be slowing down, but Poland is keeping up the good work and making the average higher.
So you are very optimistic about this economy.
We work hard.
Well, right,
let's
but
say.
you mentioned the Ukrainians, the labor force from Ukraine, the rest of Europe. In 2014, when the skirmishes or conflict with Russia, between Russia and Ukraine started, most of European countries didn't want the Ukrainians to work in their country. They normally went to Russia. They turned back. Most of them ended up in Poland. If you go through Ukraine, you will find out on almost every bus stop invitation to work to Poland. But the Ukrainians want to go further west, to Germany, to Holland, to France.
It's not like 2 million people are working constantly the same. 2 million people are working in Poland. They're shifting, so some of them are returning home, some of them are going west, as you said. But generally, the level of employment is very high among Ukrainians, and they are an essential part of our economy now. So generally, I think the situation between what is happening with migrants in Western Europe and in Poland is opening to countries that that the people are very culturally similar, right? So there are not much tensions among Poles and Ukrainians, Poles, Belarusians, and so on. So the tensions are pretty low comparing to the size of the migrant force.
Okay, so thank you very much for this insight. Marcin Roszkowski of Jagiellonian Institute was our guest tonight, sir.
Thank you very much. Have a pleasant evening.
And that was it for tonight's Poland Daily Business.
Welcome back to Poland Daily Weather. Let's take a look at the forecast for tomorrow. Rainfalls and storms will appear on the west and on the south. On the northeast we will see plenty of sunlight. The temperature will range from 25 to 31 degrees. And now let's see tomorrow's forecast for the continent. In Scandinavia, temperature will range about 27 degrees. In British Islands, light overcast weather will appear. In Moscow and Kiev, some rain is expected. The highest temperature will be in Rome, 36 degrees. Thank you for watching and goodbye.
Welcome to Poland Daily Culture. I'm John Carter, and on today's episode we're joined by candidate for Mars One project, Mikołaj Zieliński. Welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me here.
One of the most interesting things and the thing which people really attach themselves on Earth is culture. And so I'm intrigued to know what you think the possibility is of kind of developing some sort of culture on Mars.
It's quite difficult to predict that because it will be very, very spontaneous. I don't know if the fact that we will be in reduced gravity, like for example, when traveling from Earth to Mars 7 months in weightlessness, zero gravity, this may be not enough time to okay, maybe one of astronauts on board will create some piece of art, which will be possible to create only in zero gravity. I don't know. Maybe it will be interesting to see someone playing a violin in zero gravity, like in one of pictures made by SpaceX when they proposed their missions to Mars. But probably since if there will be some, like I am not very art-oriented person. I never created anything like this in my life, but I know some other candidates, and they sing songs, they paint, they write books, and some of them are filmmakers or actors. They play in drama theaters, they dance in ballet, or they did. So yeah, indeed, between Mars One candidates, you will find a lot of people for whom art is quite an important part of their life, and I'm sure they will express themselves in some form, but it may be very, very surprising. I don't know.
I think that maybe that's the kind of beauty of it, is like it's so unpredictable, like the way in which sort of culture itself develops kind of organically on Earth.
Mars One is a highly ambitious project aiming to establish a permanent human settlement on Mars. It might sound like science fiction, but they have scheduled several unmanned missions in the next few years, which will create a habitable settlement before rigorously trained crews depart to Mars. This team is yet to be established. There is currently a 100-person shortlist under evaluation, with that eventually being whittled down to 24 before the candidates undergo some of the toughest psychological training known to humanity. The shortlist includes people from all around the world with a variety of backgrounds, including the only Polish citizen, Mikołaj Zielinski. Mikołaj is a software programmer with a passion for science, discovery and adventure. 5 years ago, he learnt about the Mars One project, and given that the only initial conditions for application were being aged over 18, he immediately applied. However, Mikołaj is not your average wannabe astronaut. His strong desire to discover and help civilization have led him to be prepared to make the ultimate sacrifice and never return to Earth.
Okay, just slightly changing gears for a second. Now, one of the topics which really kind of sticks in people's minds is when they hear the word one-way mission. Now, first of all, tell us, why does it have to be a one-way mission?
There are, I think, mostly two reasons. One, because it's cheaper.
It's back to the money again, isn't it?
Yeah, unfortunately, it can be even 100 times cheaper if you. What makes this is maybe one of reasons why we didn't go to Mars yet, because all space agencies that would be capable of organizing mission to Mars were thinking only about return mission, because no one would. Previously, no one would be able to agree that agency, which is running from money from taxpayers, would send humans somewhere and then let them come back. Mars One is a private initiative, so it's not linked with any government and has more liberty in decision making, and they could come up with something like this, which indeed makes it possible. However, with the technology that spacecraft that SpaceX is developing, return mission will be possible very, very soon.
Yeah?
Yeah. And another thing is that I was asked during the interview if, imagine that after 2 years of living on Mars, another crew is coming, and the spacecraft that brought them will be coming to Earth, and there will be opportunity to come back to Earth. Do you take it? Do you go to Earth or you stay on Mars? And I answered no. I would be interested. I am more interested in staying on Mars and really searching for life and doing more experiments for science and staying with my team, because actually in that question was what was most important was our team spirit. Mm-hmm. If we thought about ourselves first or about our teammates. Because if you say, yeah, I will go back to Earth, then it means that you leave your teammates and you are a really important part of the team, because you may be one of doctors, or you may be one of chemical engineers, electrical engineers, and without you, if something related to your area of specialization happens, they may not be able to solve that problem, and this can jeopardize the mission. So if we go there together, we stay together because we just must be together as a team, and there is no more an individual. We are the team, like a one unit, and this is another important thing.
And so, just relating to that, what is your specialization?
I don't know yet. We didn't decide on such things yet, because first, we are still in the middle of the selection process. And another thing is that I don't know who will be in my team. And for example, I have some interest in some fields of science, or let's say psychology and biology, but there may be in my team someone who has already good background in biology or psychology and will be more suitable to take that responsibility. So we will figure out who takes what, probably after some time, once we learn about each other and we have good understanding who can learn something faster than another topic, because I know that some things I remember easier, I learn because I have some interest in it. Yeah. Some others I can read, study, try, and it doesn't stay in my mind.
This is the wall to those who fell in the Warsaw Uprising at the Warsaw Uprising Museum. Today, we meet a remarkable man, 10 when the Second World War broke out, 12 when he joined the underground, 13 when he was tortured by the Gestapo, 15 when he took part in the Warsaw Uprising itself. This is the remarkable story of Professor Julian Kulski. Join me on Poland Daily History as we look at this remarkable man's story and his remarkable life. We're here in the Freedom Garden of the Warsaw Uprising Museum to talk to a veteran of the uprising, Professor Julian Kulski, who, as a young man, indeed a teenager, fought in the Warsaw Uprising. Professor, thank you for joining us. Before we get to the Warsaw Uprising itself, would you be able to say a few words about your family background?
Well, I was very fortunate in my family. I had a very nice family. My father was a legionnaire and fought in order for Poland to have independence. And my mother was a very good mother, and we lived, I was born in Warsaw, so that was my father. My name is Julian. My father's name was Julian. My son's name is Julian. So it's a tradition that the oldest son, it's called Julian. As I said, I was fortunate because I was born into free Poland, the 20 years of freedom. And we fully appreciated that, which is more than is appreciated in the West often. And therefore, I was a Boy Scout, and we were trained a semi-military way. So when the Germans came in, we were kind of ready to fight.
Yes, yes. Because you were very young when the war broke out. I mean,
well, the war,
10 and a half.
I was 10 and a half when the war broke out. But I think a lot of us youngsters were hoping that we would have war because we wanted to. We had these models, fathers, uncles that fought and had great stories to tell. So we didn't want to be left behind.
Yes.
So I actually prayed for the war, and Hitler fulfilled my.
So he wasn't all bad.
I got more than I asked for.
Exactly. But in the years immediately, from what you can remember, in the years immediately before the war, I mean, were you conscious that a war was coming? I mean, when you spoke to your father, for example?
My father was fully aware that war was coming. He was vice president of Warsaw, and President Starzyński, who was the mayor then, sent him to Germany to buy some buses. And so he went to a lot of factories, and he didn't see many buses, but he saw the tanks. And he was in the First World War, he was an intelligence officer, so he reported that to the Polish government. And that was about 3 years ahead.
Yes, and of course, when you say sort of that you and other young people sort of praying for war, I suppose you, at that stage, obviously, they would have had any concept of the horror of the war that was coming, because I think it was a war that was very different, as it turned out, in terms of the actual horror inflicted on ordinary folk.
The Second World War was much worse. My father, who lived through and fought through both wars, said that the Germans were just completely different Germans in the Second World War. They were much more vicious.
Yeah, because I think one thing that comes out in reading your book, which we'll talk about a bit later, and other people's books, is that although people knew war was coming, they knew war was always horrific, however war turns out, I think people thought, and you mentioned an episode in your own book where a relative said, but we knew the Germans from the First World War. The Germans won't do anything really, really bad.
They were so bad, right.
So sort of people had this, I think, this sort of false feeling of security, that it would be a war, but it wouldn't be any different from any other war.
Well, I think most people hoped that there would be no war in the last minute, but the Warsaw was being prepared. My father was appointed in 1937 as the head to organize the anti-aircraft defense, and he had thousands of people trained to put out fires, just like in England.
Yes, where we had exactly the people who weren't actually in the army were.
In every big building, there were people who were trained to bring sand and water.
And so, when they actually became clear on the 1st of September 1939 that war had broken out, were you actually quite excited personally because you thought you wanted to, like your parents, the generation, you wanted to fight, and this was going to be your chance?
We were on a holiday at the Kazimierz on the Vistula.
That's right, yes.
And my father took us out. And then 2 days later, the car came back from President Starzyński that the war is starting, and he left us. So I was there alone and playing around with some mates of mine. And we suddenly got terribly scared because there was this terrible noise and the wind, which was unnatural. And there was the German bombers going along the Vistula to bomb Warsaw. So the first time that I saw the black crosses on the thing, I knew they were German. And then the Germans came, when they did come into Kazimierz, they put up a big show, put up a big orchestra, military orchestra, and gathered the rabbi and tied him up to the top of the temple, and it was a wooden temple, and put fire to it. And then they made the other Jews go and try to save him. So there was a sight for a 10-year-old. So I got right away a little smacking of what was happening. But actually, I wasn't surprised at the meanness and terror of the Germans, because I had a German nanny when I was 4 or 5 years old. Right. And I hated her with my heart. She was trying to teach me German, and I was very difficult. I didn't want to learn German. And she was tortured, 4-year-old. I'll never forget it. I lived next to a viaduct, and she would buy some dry peas and make me kneel on it as a penalty for about an hour. A 4-year-old.
It's a pretty horrific way to treat.
And then she would beat me in the middle of the night and told me if I tell my father or my mother, she will kill me. Well, one night I knew it was coming. I was begging my mother not go out. They were going to an opera, but fortunately my father lost the tickets, and he came into it just as she was beating the hell out of me. And from there on, my father became a hero, because he picked her up and threw her down the stairs.
Excellent. So of course, in your eyes, your father became a really fantastic, who delivered you from this horror.
Exactly.
Yes, because when you say in Kazimierz and the Germans arrived and they immediately sort of did something terrible to the rabbi, I mean, you make the point in the early part in your book that for you had friends who were Jewish, who were non-Jewish. Indeed, in your own background there, there was a distant ancestor who was a chief rabbi of Warsaw.
Oh, yeah.
So, and I think you make the point that for you, religion was irrelevant. You had friends of all faiths. And so I was wondering what the impact was on suddenly seeing these people come into your country, the German forces, and sort of start creating a division where in your life up to that point, there had been no division.
Well, I'm used to it from pre-war days, that there were Christian Poles and there were Jewish Poles, but not that there were Poles and Jews opposite to each other, because this was creation of the Germans, as you say rightly, and it's stayed until today. It's still the division.
And I think that is, yes, I mean, I think that is something, an important point you make, that people forget. It's not Poles and Jews, it's Polish people, some of whom are Christian, some of whom are Jewish, some of whom are Protestant or whatever. And it's the creation, I think, of these divisions, which is so destructive.
And one of the reasons that even the Christian Poles who didn't particularly like Jews actually saved their lives, because it was such a barbaric thing to children and women and men, that everybody, I know in my part of Warsaw, almost in every house there was a Jewish family. My family saved three Jewish families. They lived in our house.
That's very, because the penalties for doing that were quite severe.
Well, it was everybody would be killed. And this was the only penalty that I know in Europe that the Germans, they were particularly harsh on Poland. Hitler never trusted us.
Hello, and it's time for another edition of Poland Daily Travel. This time we're taking you to Płock. That's right, that ancient capital of Poland, northwest of Warsaw. It's only 100 and some kilometers, but it's almost a world away from the hustle and bustle of the nation's capital. Płock is famous for its situation on a bluff high above the Wisła. Its cathedral is known as one of the 5 oldest churches in Poland. Its location is at a junction of ancient shipping routes, which made it a very important medieval city. Nowadays, it is the home of the Museum of Mazowsza with its excellent collection of Belle Epoque furniture. And that's before you even consider the city's most original asset. And that asset is the longest pier on a river in the whole of Europe. The pier extends out into the wide Vistula and provides a natural harbor for smaller boats, mostly pleasure craft and some smaller fishing boats. So when you're in Warsaw, Płock is not that far away. It's an enjoyable day out. You'll have to get your car. There's no train service there. You might take a bus, but it's worth it to see the beautiful countryside between Warsaw and Płock. So stay tuned as Poland Daily Travel takes you to the princely city of Płock. Poland Daily Travel, your favorite travel programming about Poland.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another exciting installment of Poland Daily Travel. We are here in the fine city of Płock, the first and ancient capital of this here country called Poland. Or actually, as Danuta and I were talking about before, it was just before Poland became a country. Yeah, but the first capital anyway, we can say.
Of course.
Yeah. And on the way, we were walking by, we're on our way up to the cathedral, and or over to the cathedral, and I said, look at this hotel. That looks like an old communist hotel. And you said, yes, it is. And then you stopped me to show this. Yeah.
That's true.
What is this all about? The hotel's right there. Starzyński Hotel, right? Yeah.
Yes.
And what's this all about?
What we can see today is not the building itself, but little statue, which is to commemorate the place of culture. Because Płock used to be not only the capital of the country, but also the capital of theatrical activity as well.
Is that correct?
I would say, for the region. For
the region, anyway.
We are proud. We are proud of the history of theatrical activity in Płock. And with Raimund Rębieliński, 19th century, Płock was the place when we had spectacular performances of modern Polish playwrights.
Like Witkacy
like Bogusławski.
Bogusławski.
Yes, so and we also had performances of modern European playwrights as well.
Like Chekhov? Or?
Oh, I wouldn't say Chekhov. It was a very important cultural place, but of course during the Second World War everything finished. The building of the theater was destroyed and was used for German Nazi purposes. Today we only have that.
We just can see the facade and this marker.
You can see how beautiful it. Yes, it was. Raimund Rębieliński, by the way, was the constructor of the city of Łódź.
Rębieliński was also, he built the theater and the city of Łódź. So he's a very important son of Płock, right? But not always so welcome in Płock.
Not always so welcome.
You were telling me before. Okay, well, let's continue. Hey, that's the old hotel overlooking the river, Communist Hotel. Very lovely edifice. Nothing like this Mr. Rębiński's piece that was made. At any rate, we're going to continue to walk through Płock, don't you think? And on our way to Cathedral. Maybe we'll find something else interesting. Right?
Let's go.
Go this way? Okay. Welcome back to Poland Daily Travel. We're here in a very beautiful vantage point. We have here behind us the cathedral. This is with Danuta, by the way. Welcome back. And welcome back, Danuta. The cathedral, one of the 5 oldest ecclesiastical buildings.
That's true.
And I say ecclesiastical because it's not a church, it's a cathedral. But and out here we can see a view northwards down the Wisła a long way. I mean, kilometers and kilometers down. So this is a very good location. And you were just telling me off camera that this is the remnants of the old castle, which would have been in a great position here, right?
It's a very good position next to the river. So on one side, the protection comes from the natural border, which is the river. And of course, there was great wall surrounding the old town and the royal castle. In fact, we are sitting next to what used to be the gate to the old town. As you can see.
Because it was
yes,
taken, these bricks.
The bricks were taken to that position, and there used to be the gate. So we are sitting just next to the entrance door to the royal castle. Let's say.
And so the cathedral was incorporated into the castle.
It was all connected at those times. The noble tower served as a prison. And a funny fact is that noble people took upper chambers. Lower chambers were meant for people of lower position.
Okay.
The cathedral that you can see behind us, as you've said, is one of the oldest churches in Poland. The beginnings date back to 1144, when the cathedral was documented. We've got documents for that. When Bishop Alexander of Malone started to construct the church, and the construction finished in 1144. But Christianity in Płock started earlier.
900 years ago.
In Płock, it was 1075, and that was the beginning of the settlement, official settlement.
Getting on for 1,000 years.
That's true. That's true.
That's amazing, isn't it?
It's an impressive building, which originally was obviously wooden, but there were great fires, invasions, wars. So what we can see today is the newly reconstructed cathedral, and it is quite impressive. It is quite impressive.
We're going to get a closer look in a second. I'm just looking out here and looking and trying to imagine, I always like to do this. If I were the prince in charge or whatever, or one of the people living in the castle, it's a great commanding location, isn't it? And this must be why Płock is destroyed many times, because of its
It was quite attractive. It was quite attractive for invaders, I would say.
Because you're commanding, we're up on a high bluff, and you're commanding, a really long view of the river here.